Welcome, Expanded Learning Program staff and administrators to the 2021 STEAMpower Conference. A special welcome to our dignitaries, San Diego County Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Paul Gothold, and the CDE Expanded Learning Division Director, Michael Funk, who you'll be able to hear from shortly. Good morning. My name is Lisa Flowers, and I'm the coordinator for the System of Support for Expanded Learning at the San Diego County Office of Education. Around this time last year, we were set to host our annual STEAMpower Conference. And I remember being told just days prior that we would need to cancel the conference and that schools would not be in session that following week. Little did we know how much our worlds would be turned upside down. Since then, we have all experienced huge shifts in our routines, with lockdowns, working from home, distance learning, quarantine, isolation, and way too many losses. The pandemic challenged us to be innovative, adaptable, and flexible. You've all faced this challenge with an unwavering commitment to serve your students and communities during a time when they needed you most. You were all called on to support in ways that were different than what you were used to. Yet you served with grace, hard work, and composure that is to be commended. Last week, we were able to capture some motivational moments from your peers. And I'd like to share one with you of someone I admire and respect, Ms. Vanessa Cass from Harborside Elementary School, followed by a welcome from our superintendent, Dr. Paul Gothold.
I come from a program of 11 years at the Y. I've seen it change. I've seen you come and go. I've seen a lot of the site supervisors come and go, and very, very inspired by what I've seen this past year. I'm getting emotional. I don't know if I should continue, but it's super inspiring seeing how you guys have grown one way or another. And this past year has definitely taken us out of our realm, right? We're not used to being at home. We're not used to being stuck, just watching 28 kids versus 100, 150. And seeing some of you, and my inspirational story was more based on how the supervisors show up to our meetings. I know it was difficult at first. It was hard. It was not something we were going to be comfortable with because it was out of our norm. But after seeing you guys, after a few meetings, I know at first hard, but after a few meetings, the smiles on your face, the way you're sharing your story right now, Cynthia, is something that I really picked up from all of our supervisors. You guys would be so inspiring at the meetings. It was amazing just seeing you guys come back day after knowing so much of what we're going through inside as far as people dying around us, not being able to see grandpa, aunts, uncles. The other day, they picked up a grandpa here from school and he passed away. The last day the kids saw him was here at Harborside. So much that they're going through, but seeing us being able to just turn it around for all of our students in our community has inspired me so much. The meetings have left me with, I say thank you to all of you guys one way or another, sending you hugs and kisses from this side, but all the supervisors around the table here at the YMCA Expanded Learning Program in South Bay, super proud of them. I'm just in awe of the brightness that I see when they come to the meetings and still wanting to come back day after day, no matter how difficult it has been through everything this year. So again, Cynthia, I appreciate everything you do for us. I appreciate all of the supervisors in and out of South Bay, wherever you may be. Thank you guys. And as a parent, if I was a mom, had my kids in school right now, I don't know what I would do without you guys, because we are here to make a difference. And right now, they need us. They need us so much. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Castu, for all that you've shared with us. It's been so amazing working with you side by side and directly. So it's been a fun journey, and hopefully we continue the journey.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Paul Gothold, proud superintendent of San Diego County Office of Education. And on behalf of our board, I'm honored to be here this morning to welcome you to the STEAMpower Conference. This year's conference theme, Full Steam Ahead, Learning Without Boundaries, is reflective of the San Diego County Office of Education's goal of a future without boundaries and our continuing commitment to equity. For students to exist in a world without boundaries, we must first ensure that all students, especially those in our historically underserved communities, have access to high-quality education, resources, and supports. This requires a systemic approach that flexibly responds to the needs of our students when they need it and how they need it. Social or cultural factors should not predict whether or not students are prepared for college and career. As you know, these efforts extend well beyond the classroom, which is why expanded learning programs and the staff who lead them are so vital to student success. Expanded learning programs have evolved over the years to become much more than just a place for students to be after school. They engage young people because they make learning meaningful and relevant, but they also make it fun and experiential. Things like robotics, coding, gardening. Students feel part of a community, and that community is further enriched by the strong partnerships with outside organizations that bridge learning with real-world experiences. These partnerships, coupled with the hands-on learning approach of quality expanded learning programs, offer a natural platform for building interest in and understanding STEAM subjects of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. STEAM is an important focus at both the local and state levels. With assistance from the statewide system of support for Expanded Learning Network and the California Expanded Learning STEAM Hub Initiative, SDCOE's team is able to work directly with local teams to lead innovative and authentic STEAM learning that ignites students' imagination and passion. During this week's conference, you'll have an opportunity to hear more about tools and activities that can help you further that effort. The sessions this week are outstanding. The many motivational moments and workshops will provide you with great information and resources that you can immediately begin using in your programs. Over this past year, we've all learned things about the importance of adapting and filling in gaps wherever possible to best support the needs of our students and families. When school campuses closed in March due to the pandemic, expanded learning staff members jumped in quickly wherever they were needed, whether it was through distribution of food, snacks and meals, support for the core day, or to connect with students and families. I want to thank you personally for your continued hard work, your flexibility, and for your dedication to improving the lives of all students across San Diego County. Thank you again for joining us today, and please enjoy the conference.
Thank you, Dr. Gothold, for joining us this morning to support expanded learning programs. And thank you to Vanessa Cass. I'd like to elevate what she mentioned, in terms of our staff, really expanded learning staff going above and beyond the call of duty, especially during this pandemic. And this week, you'll have the opportunity to watch more mini motivational moments from others in the field. We know that you all have many inspirational stories to share, so we'd love to hear your story too. Check out the tab on Schedule for mini motivational moments to learn more and about how you can submit a story. Now I'd like to introduce my colleague, Melissa Minas, our project specialist for the Systems of Support for Expanded Learning.
Good morning, everybody. It is my pleasure to introduce Michael Funk, Director of the Expanded Learning Division for the California Department of Education. Under Michael's direction, the Expanded Learning Division, in collaboration with a highly diverse group of educators, practitioners, and providers, developed a vision for expanded learning in California, strategic plan, which laid out a strong roadmap to guide the work of the Expanded Learning Division, which resulted in numerous successes in embedding quality systems and technical assistance to support programs and elevate expanded learning as a key partner in the K-12 education system. A crucial element of the plan was the creation of a statewide system of support composed of members of the CDE, county offices of education, and statewide contracted technical assistance providers. Michael knew that the key to supporting students was through the relationships between people in all levels of the statewide system. Michael understands the challenges that can arise at the program level. Prior to his role, Michael founded the Sunset Neighborhood Beacon Center in San Francisco in 1996, providing engaging programs to approximately 1,100 youth each day and 400 adults each week. Without further ado, I'd like to present Mr. Michael Funk.
Good morning, San Diego. Thank you, Lisa, Melissa, for inviting me to be here this morning and for your leadership and for the work. Thanks to my CDE team, Nora and Fred. I don't know if you're here, but thank you for your contributions and work in San Diego. What a powerful story from Ms. Cass at Harborside. I was touched by what she was sharing. That's exactly what the story is that expanded learning showed up in relationship. And we showed up to love our kids when things seemed to be crumbling and disruptive all around us. There was a foundation there of stability in relationship. I'll talk more about that in science, but just a pleasure to be here this morning. And Dr. Gothold, thank you for your leadership and our work together over the years, and for your words, which were spot on. So a while back, Lisa sent me an email, said, hey, we'd love you to come and join this amazing STEAMpower Conference we're putting on. Love you to do a little entry point keynote and say some words to the folks. And she said, you know, you always have good stories. So why don't you come tell us a story? Well, Lisa and Melissa, I've got a great story. I've got a great story this morning. It's a San Diego story. And it's the San Diego story of how San Diego blazed a trail a year ago. Lisa mentioned it, others mentioned it, Dr. Gothold mentioned it. A year ago, it was 2 days ago, 2 days in a year ago today, that we began to sense that things were starting to really change. After things shut down, I remember thinking, well, maybe it'll be 2 weeks, maybe a month. What do we have to do to help programs navigate this period of instability? How can we get the word out there? What's going on? What's happening with programs? Who would have believed a year later, we're now still talking about reopening? Thankfully, we've got the on-ramp to our future in place with the vaccines. But the reason I want to talk about a San Diego story is because a year ago, there was some amazing things happening here. And there are some lessons in leadership that there's a story of leadership that I experienced, but I also witnessed in San Diego. And one of those, the critical and the first element of that story that I want to point to was that in the early weeks of the pandemic, in fact, in the first couple of months of the pandemic, there were a lot of people who were kind of struck with anxiety and fear of the unknown. What's going to happen? This is uncharted territory. None of us have dealt with this before. It's a crisis of a lifetime. And yet, what I saw in San Diego was, rather than being struck by the fear and kind of looking down, or there was this commitment to look ahead, to look up, to look forward. I remember an early conversation with Dr. Gothold when we got on the phone, and this was just weeks in, and we were starting to wonder, what's going to be the relevance of expanded learning? I mean, when there's no school, how do you do after school? Right? That's a kind of an existential question. What is after school when there's no school? But Dr. Gothold was so clear in a conversation with me. He said, we are convinced that the role of expanded learning is only going to be highlighted during this time. That we must have our community educators, our community-based organizations surrounding these children and families. There was just a there was already a vision being articulated for what this could be when none of us knew what would be. I remember a couple months in. So, I mean, so just to know, there were so many county offices and districts who were not doing that, who were basically emailing, calling, tell us what to do, tell us what to do, what can we do, what's happening. I took the position a few months in saying, please tell me what you need. Assume you have the flexibility you need and tell us what you need. Let's figure out what we can do. But even in that time, going back and forth with Dr. Gothold, I remember one night in my office at CD, I was like many of us, I was doing 7 days a week, long days, trying to figure out, people need guidance. What is the path forward? What can we possibly do? The governor's office might act. When the governor's office acts, it's going to be short term. How can we possibly give programs the flexibility they need? And I remember, honestly, there were days when anxiety and fear were so palpable for me that I knew that someone had to provide some guidance. And that someone was me and my team. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the next step was. Like many of us going back a year, you might just take a moment just to think about what emotions you navigated 10 months ago, 11 months ago. Anxiety and fear were prevalent. And one of the lessons that I learned was the ability to acknowledge and sit with uncertainty. Acknowledge the anxiety and fear that comes with that, but not to let it take control. And I was having that moment in my office, and I packed up and I started to head for home just a mile away, and was going to meet Janae and Claudia and reunite with the family. And I remember in the car, just during that short drive, I said out loud, okay, fear, you can come along for the ride, but you can't drive. And I think we're going to have more days like that. And what I saw in San Diego, I'm sure there was uncertainty. I'm sure there was fear. I'm sure there was anxiety. But that didn't drive decisions. What drove decisions and then actions was putting students at the center, communities at the center, families at the center. What a powerful lesson for us today. Today, there's still uncertainty in front of us. Today, there's opportunity in front of us. But as you know, we put students and communities first. That is the key. The second point, I mean, looking forward and keeping students in the center, not letting fear drive decisions, because months into the pandemic, there were institutions, community-based organizations, and districts who did not act because they were concerned and fearful of risk, of liability, and risk and liability concerns drove decisions, not students. The second thing that San Diego did that I think is so powerful is that know the science and then act. Know the science and then act. San Diego was one of the first to put cohorts of students in person on campus. And I remember all across California, counties and districts were waiting for county health officials to give the green light. And it was different in every county. There was such a massive amount of disparity and differences between what was allowed and what was not. Again, another conversation with Dr. Gothold. He had a clear path. It was in writing. Your county was one of the first to say, this is our path out of this. This is our path through this. these are the things that we're going to do. And I remember, because of the relationship that Dr. Gothold had with county leaders, he took the step to write a letter and say, this is what we are going to do. And the county health official picked up the phone and said, okay, go do it. That takes a lot of courage to act instead of wait. And it was based on the science, the emergent science even back then, that under these conditions, we believe we can keep children and staff safe. It's interesting to me how in this STEAM conference, all about science and all about critical thinking, that many times decisions are being made that are not based on science. Yeah, there are countless examples across the world of schools that have reopened successfully with the right conditions, with the right precautions. Just last week, if you haven't had a chance to see the fireside chat, or if you haven't had a chance to watch them, Dr. Francine Stewart from Monterey Peninsula Unified School District was on the fireside chat last week, Thursday. She talked about the very specific things that they put into place based on the science to bring children together, to bring staff together. And if you watch the chat, there's a link at the chat where you can actually look at policies and documents they created and download them and make them your own. We shared them specifically for this reason. But I asked her, how many cases of spread of the virus did you trace between your students and adults, between adults to the students, or students to students? 0. There were transmissions. Programs had to adjust and shut down because of something that happened out in the community where a staff was exposed at some gathering, what have you. But to their knowledge, there was not a single case of something being of the virus being transferred because they followed the science. So in this era of this occasion of this STEAMpower Conference, follow the science, know the science. Our science tells us to practice inquiry, follow the plan. Francine talked about it. We didn't get it all perfect, but we put together a plan. And then after a bit, we assessed how the plan went, and then we made adjustments. Continuous improvement. Just going to take a short detour. I'm sure, for several years, Lisa asked me to write something for the program for this amazing STEAM conference. And I did. I wrote one of those letters that goes in the front of the program that no one reads. And but I remember 2 or 3 years ago writing a letter for this conference that talked about my experience going to the national academies in Washington, D.C. and going to a STEAM conference and hearing researchers and presenters. And the thing I heard that I wrote about was that the head of the national academies talked about the purpose of STEM education or STEAM education. So many times we are told that the purpose of STEAM education is to help prepare our young people for the jobs of the future. And it is. That's part of it. So many times we hear from industry that the purpose of good STEAM education is to develop a workforce. We can't import all the enough STEAM workers, STEAM experts, and engineers, etc. So it's about workforce. It's about being competitive. It's an economic interest. And that's true. But at the end of the day, what is the ultimate consequence and result of powerful STEAM education? It's preparing young people to be critical thinkers. It's preparing young people to contribute to our democracy. And I don't have to go on too much of a exploration here to remind us that in this time, in this country, in the last several months, we have had on either side of the political spectrum, in any place in the political spectrum, we have people following conspiracy theories. We have people who are doing the opposite of following the science of critical thinking. So I offer to you that while the STEAMpower Conference means a lot of things, it essentially means preparing our young people to be critical thinkers in their lives, in their communities, and in our democracy. So the third point I want to make is that San Diego took the courage to act. They looked ahead, they looked forward with the vision, you followed the science, and then you took the courage to act. And in this case, I wrote down last night, it's being willing to become something you've never been. Being willing to become something you've never been. That phrase stuck with me as I was thinking about this morning, because expanded learning started to take on new roles in the K-12 system. And working alongside of K-12 educators, our community educators, we're taking on leadership where there was a vacuum. You were supporting families in ways that we haven't been called on to do before. But you did it, and you did it well, and our educational system noticed. Our educational system began to see the power of, instead of saying, well, when the bell rings, they're your kids. Before the bell rings, they're our kids. All of a sudden to come together and support our kids together. And the result of that courage of being something you've never been before, we now have AB 86, which was signed by the governor. We now have legislation signed into law, the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant, $4.6 billion. We're not quite sure what that's going to mean because it's going to be local decisions, but based on what I've seen, and based on what I've seen in San Diego, where districts and county leadership recognized the importance and value of expanded learning programs, that there will be some amazing opportunities ahead of us in the Expanded Learning Opportunities Grant program, where doing expanded learning, mental health services for kids, food security, all these elements are part of it. I'm involved in meetings, was involved in meetings Friday. I'm involved in meetings today here at the department, where we're developing the template that districts need to fill out in order to receive the funds. And in that template, the districts need to articulate what they plan to do. We believe that with your help and leadership, those districts can look forward, as you've done, can act on the science, as you've done, and be courageous, as you've been, and partner with expanded learning in very powerful and significant ways. There's never been an opportunity like this in my career. And we have an opportunity to bring our strength. Everyone's talking about the social emotional supports. I was watching a webinar this week where Dr. Shanika Carvey from Sacramento County Office of Ed was laying out the elements of a whole child approach to education. And this was part of the science of learning and design. If you want to get into the science in this STEAM conference, look at the science of learning and design. SOLD is the acronym. But it talks about how important social emotional support and development is for how we learn as humans, not just children, but how we all learn, and how the context for how we learn influences the way we learn more than anything else we've ever believed before. It's the science that the cortisol and the oxytocin and those chemicals that released, those chemicals that when we feel uncertainty and fear, like I felt when I was driving home, that starts to cloud our thinking and the parts of our brain that control fight or flight take over, and we lose that sense of reasoning and logic. But when we feel supported and loved, when there's a consistent, when we see a smile from adult, like Ms. Carr talked about at Harbor Elementary, when she talked about the smiles, when those staff showed up, there's science behind how the way the staff showed up from South Bay YMCA, the way that your staff showed up and how you showed up, there's science as to why people felt drawn in and people could learn. And so based on that science, Sacramento County has developed these are the critical elements of whole child education. These are the things that have to be in place. And unprompted, this Shanika Carvey is not involved with expanded learning directly, but she said in this seminar, she said, now these are the things we have to build into our curriculum as K-12 educators. But she said, go look at any high quality expanded learning program and you will see all of these elements on fire all the time. This is what expanded learning at its best does. We need to learn from them. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the opportunity with AB 86, is to step ahead with our strength and step into this role in leadership. Lastly, last week, the president signed into law the America's Rescue Plan. And there's an element of that rescue plan. Of course, there's stimulus checks and there's all types of protections. There's, the chance to make the biggest impact on child poverty that we've seen in our country since the Great Depression. Part of that is ESSER 3, the Elementary and Secondary School Early Relief Fund. There's been several of those that have happened. But this one specifically, while in the past, that those federal stimulus funds have allowed for districts to use the funds for expanded learning opportunities and activities, this provision sets aside $1.22 billion nationally for after-school programs. It goes to the states for the states to administer and get out to districts in some way. That's nearly the same amount of money that goes out nationwide for all 21st century funds statewide. We can expect nearly $120 million. We'll know sometime this week how much is going to come to California for that, but it's going to be nearly $1.2 million for after-school programs. Now it's one-time money. It's for 2 years. I've got another meeting later on this afternoon that's going to try to think about, well, what could we do? You can't start a new program in a new community and then take the money away a year and a half later. So what does that mean? How can it help? In addition to that $1.22 billion, there's $1.22 billion in addition to that set aside, required to use for summer enrichment activities. Folks, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money coming our way. And the state legislature is going to have a large say on what that means and how it goes out. And we're not sure what that means, but we're going to start talking about what the ideas can mean. So all that to say, in this amazing year of flexibility, of adventure, of stepping in to make a difference, we have a whole new frontier ahead of us. We have a whole new opportunity ahead of us to take those things that we've accomplished in the last 11 months and to build on them and surround our young people with the love and the care that they need. And believe me, you've heard me say lead with love. You've heard me say that a lot. Leading with love is not the soft stuff. It's everything I've been talking about. It's the courage, it's the vision, it's stepping into action and making sure that all of our children have what they deserve. And moving into this opportunity now where counties are going to start turning colors from purple to red to orange to yellow. We're going to have more opportunities to bring children together. How we do that, it's a social justice issue. that we take these resources and provide these children with all they have. I'll close with a mentor of mine gave me a phrase last year during the heart of the pandemic that has stuck with me almost every, well, he actually gave it to me before the pandemic ever started. And that's this notion of when the path ahead is not clear, when it seems kind of opaque and you're not sure what the path is, there's no map, there's no trail. He said, when you walk with integrity, the path comes up to your feet. You just take the step, even if you're not quite sure where your foot's going to land. And so that's our challenge right now with our K-12 partners, with our communities as expanded learning universe. Walk with integrity, the path will come to our feet, and lead with love. Thank you, Lisa and Melissa, for the opportunity to share this morning. And I wish you an amazing, wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, Michael, for your amazing message, your stories, and your leadership. We really appreciate you taking the time to help us kick off this week's STEAMpower Conference. And I'll pass it over to you, Lisa.
Am I unmuted? There you go. Yeah, so I do want to reiterate as well. Thank you, Michael, especially for modeling the practice of leading with love. I think that, you know, our expanded learning programs are definitely coming to the forefront in supporting students. And that's in big part, you guys, for the work that you all are doing. So just really want to express my appreciation for all of you. And this conference is for you, right? So I want you to know that we were intentional in creating a conference that included workshops that are relevant to the now, right? And so you'll see that some of the sessions aren't necessarily super just STEAM focused, and you'll see some new things such as an opportunity to practice mindfulness. And I encourage you to take that first step and take that courageous first step to try a mindfulness practice this week. We've been real fortunate at the CDE with Michael's leadership to practice mindfulness in our meetings. And it does make a difference, and especially with our own self-care and awareness. And we know that you all are doing amazing work at this time, but we know it takes a toll, right? And so this is for you to really focus on yourselves and your own self-care. So please, if you have a moment, one of the mornings, and we have a starting session today at 10 o'clock, right? To introduce mindfulness if you're available. And then we have a practice at noon. And then tomorrow, Tuesday till Friday at 8:30. And it only takes 10-15 minutes of your time. So I encourage you to participate if you can. Also, we know that many of you are probably going to be watching this as a recorded archived version, and want you to know that all sessions, keynotes, and workshops will be recorded. We know that at this time, many people are being pulled throughout the day from early morning to late afternoon. And so in order to be flexible for you all, because again, this conference is for you, all of the videos will be archived for you to be able to watch at a later time. So with that said, I just want to say thank you for joining us this morning. Thank you again, Michael, for being here. Next session is at 10 o'clock, and enjoy the rest of the conference, you guys. Take care.